The stars twinkled peacefully in the void as Admiral Robert Nash stood on the observation deck of the EDF Dauntless, his weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass as he watched the busy space traffic around Europa Colony. 50 years of space exploration had brought humanity far, but nothing had prepared them for what was coming. "Admiral, we're picking up unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system." Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice crackled through the comm system. "They don't match any known human vessels." Nash straightened his uniform. "Alert status yellow. Get Dr. Martinez up here from Xenobiology. She needs to see this." Within minutes, Dr. Linda Martinez rushed onto the deck, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She'd spent years preparing for first contact, but not even she could have predicted what would happen next. The unknown vessels appeared suddenly, their massive forms dwarfing the largest human ships. They were beautiful in a strange way, all curved lines and shimmering surfaces that seemed to bend light itself. The ships moved with impossible grace for their size, arranging themselves in a perfect circular formation. "Those designs," Martins whispered, her eyes wide. "They're unlike anything we theorized." The level of technology required to build something like that. Before Nash could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with a transmission. The being that appeared looked almost like living crystal, its form shifting and flowing like liquid glass. When it spoke, its voice resonated with the weight of ages. "I am the Archon of Vega, speaking for the Elder Species Coalition. We have watched your kind's rapid expansion with growing concern. You are but children playing with forces beyond your understanding." Nash stepped forward, his voice firm but diplomatic. "I am Admiral Robert Nash of the Earth Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations, but I must point out that you've entered sovereign human space without permission." The Archon's crystalline form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Sovereign space. Your species has barely learned to crawl beyond its cradle. We have guided the galaxy's development for millions of years. It is our right and duty to contain species that expand too quickly, too recklessly." Dr. Martinez tried to intervene. "Archon, we respect your coalition's experience, but humanity has every right to develop at its own pace. We've colonized these regions peacefully and—" "Peace is precisely our concern," the Archon interrupted. "Your kind developed faster than any species we've encountered. From primitive chemical rockets to functional void drives in mere centuries. Such rapid advancement must be contained before it destabilizes the careful balance we've maintained." Nash felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you threatening us, Archon?" "This is not a threat, Admiral. This is a lesson in humility." Without warning, one of the Elder Species vessels fired a beam of pure energy at Europa Colony's outer section. The defense shields, humanity's best technology, didn't even slow it down. 3,000 colonists died in an instant. "No," Martins screamed, but Nash grabbed her arm, holding her back. The Archon's form pulsed with cold light. "This demonstration was necessary. You will now understand your place in the greater order. The Coalition expects your full cooperation in limiting your expansion and submitting to our guidance. Resist, and we will be forced to enact stricter measures." Nash's face had gone completely cold, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You just murdered 3,000 civilians to make a point. A regrettable but necessary sacrifice to preserve galactic stability," the Archon replied. "Your emotional response proves our concerns about human volatility are well-founded." Nash looked around his bridge. Every human face showed the same mix of horror and rage. He turned back to the screen, his decision made. "Archon, I want you to understand something very clearly. Humanity has a long memory for those who harm us. We've spent our entire history fighting against bullies and tyrants who thought they could control us through fear. It never ends well for them." The Archon's form rippled. "You dare to threaten the Elder Species Coalition. Your primitive weapons cannot hope to." "This isn't a threat," Nash cut him off, using the Archon's own words. "This is a promise. You just killed thousands of our people to teach us humility. Now we're going to teach you about fear." He cut the transmission and immediately opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Admiral Nash. We have a code black situation. The Elder Species Coalition has just committed an act of war against humanity. Europa colony has been hit, casualties in the thousands, requesting immediate implementation of Protocol Omega." The response came back instantly. "Protocol Omega authorized. All fleets mobilize. May God have mercy on their souls, because we won't." As Nash watched the Elder Species fleet disappear into fold space, he thought about all the wars in human history. Every time someone had underestimated humanity's resolve, our capacity for both creation and destruction. These elder species thought their age made them superior. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our numbers. It was our rage. Dr. Martinez stood beside him, tears streaming down her face as she watched recovery ships racing toward what remained of Europa colony's outer ring. They didn't even mourn those people, didn't give them a chance. "No," Nash replied quietly. And that was their biggest mistake. They thought they were teaching us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. He turned to his crew, seeing the same determination on every face. Instead, they're about to learn why humanity's history is written in blood. "Sound General Quarters. Today we go to war." Throughout human space, the call went out. Ships that had been hidden away began powering up. Weapons that had been theoretical became operational. The elder species thought they were dealing with children playing at war. They were about to meet humanity's veterans. As Nash watched his fleet form up around the Dauntless, he remembered an old quote from Earth's history. "We sleep soundly in our beds because rough men stand ready in the night to visit violence on those who would harm us." The elder species had chosen to harm humanity. Now they would learn why every species that had ever made that choice had come to regret it. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and Admiral Robert Nash intended to make sure it was a war the elder species would never forget. "Battle stations," he ordered, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Let's show them what happens when you push humanity too far." The lights dimmed to combat settings, and throughout the fleet, humanity prepared for war. The elder species had lived for millions of years without knowing fear. That was about to change. General Amanda Cole stood in Earth's main military command center, watching as red dots appeared across the giant holographic map. Each dot represented another human colony or outpost under attack. The elder species hadn't waited long to continue their lesson. "They're hitting everything at once," she said, her gray eyes narrowing. "They think they can scare us into submission." John Baker, one of the few survivors from Europa colony, stood beside her. His right arm was now a military-grade prosthetic, a reminder of what he'd lost in the first attack. "They don't understand us at all, do they?" "No," Cole replied, a cold smile forming on her face. "And that's exactly why they're going to lose." The command center buzzed with activity as reports flooded in. The elder species had superior technology, yes, but they'd made 3 huge mistakes. First, they'd assumed humanity had shown them all our weapons. Second, they thought their advanced shields could stop anything humans could throw at them. And third, they'd forgotten that humans had been preparing for alien warfare for centuries. Dr. William Hughes walked in, carrying a tablet with the latest weapon test results. "General, Project Thunder is ready. They won't see this coming. Because they think we're primitive." Cole nodded. "Status of the hidden fleets. All ships report ready." An officer called out. "The elder species still haven't detected our stealth systems. They really believe those few ships they've seen are all we have." Cole turned to the massive screen showing Admiral Nash's face. "Admiral, is your fleet in position?" "Ready and waiting," Nash replied. "The enemy is exactly where we want them. They're so busy showing off their power. They haven't noticed they're being herded." The plan was simple but effective. While the elder species were busy attacking what they thought were humanity's main colonies, the real counterattack was about to begin. Humanity had learned long ago to keep its best weapons hidden. All units, Cole's voice rang out across the command network. Operation Awakening is now active. Show them what humanity can really do. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Elder Species fleet attacking Alpha Centauri suddenly lost all power. Their mighty ships, built with technology millions of years old, simply went dark. What is this? The Archon's voice boomed across the emergency channels. What primitive trick is this? Cole let them panic for a moment before responding. This, Archon, is why you should have studied our history more carefully. Humans don't just build weapons to destroy. We build weapons to disable, to confuse, to trap. Welcome to your first lesson in human warfare. Project Thunder wasn't just one weapon. It was a whole system designed to turn the Elder Species' advanced technology against them. Their complex neural networks, their quantum communications, their energy shields, all of it useless against old-fashioned electromagnetic pulses combined with some very new human innovations. All ships, weapons-free. Nash's voice echoed through the command center. Show them what those primitive weapons can do. The space around Alpha Centauri lit up as humanity's hidden fleet revealed itself. The Elder Species ships, their systems still scrambled, never stood a chance. Humanity's weapons might have been simpler, but they worked perfectly. John Baker watched with grim satisfaction as the mighty Elder Species vessels fell one by one. "This is for Europa," he whispered. In the Archon's command ship, panic was spreading. Nothing in their millions of years of experience had prepared them for this. Humans weren't fighting like an inferior species should. They were fighting with a mix of simple and advanced technology that made no sense to the Elder Species' tactical computers. "How?" the Archon demanded, its crystalline form flickering with agitation. "Your species is too young for such strategies." "You forgot something important," Cole replied, her voice cold. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned a few things about war, like how the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one you underestimate." The battle continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. When it was over, the Elder Species had lost 30% of their attack fleet. The survivors retreated in disorder, their confidence shattered. In the command center, Cole turned to Dr. Hughes. "Start production on the next phase of weapons. They'll be back, and this time they'll be ready for Project Thunder." "Already done," Hughes replied with a smile. "We got some surprises they'll never see coming." John Baker looked at the battle reports coming in. They really thought they could just bully us into submission. "Why?" "Because they're old," Cole explained. "They've been the strongest for so long, they forgot what it's like to fight for survival. But humans, we've never forgotten. Every war, every battle in our history taught us something. And now we're going to teach them." Admiral Nash's face appeared on the main screen again. "General, we're getting reports from our deep space probes. The Elder Species are calling an emergency meeting of their coalition. Looks like we got their attention." "Good," Cole nodded. "Let them talk. Let them plan. Whatever they come up with, we'll be ready. Because there's one more thing they don't understand about humans." "What's that?" Baker asked. "We don't just fight to win," Cole said, looking at the map of human space. "We fight to make sure nobody ever threatens us again. By the time this war is over, the Elder Species won't just respect humanity. They'll fear us." As if to emphasize her point, another report came in. One of the Elder Species' major supply bases had just gone dark. The hidden fleet they'd positioned there was gone, destroyed by weapons they'd never seen coming. "Send word to all colonies," Cole ordered. "Tell them to hold strong. The giant is awake now, and we're just getting started." Across human space, the message spread. The Elder Species had thought they were teaching humanity a lesson about humility. Instead, they were learning a harsh truth. Sometimes the student becomes the teacher, and humanity had some very painful lessons to share. The war was far from over, but the first major battle had been won. Humanity had shown the Elder Species something they'd never expected, that sometimes the youngest species could be the most dangerous. As Cole looked at the battlefield reports, she smiled. The elder species had just learned their first lesson in fear. There would be many more to come. Prepare the next phase, she ordered. Let's show them what else humanity has been hiding. Captain Jennifer Shaw stood at the helm of the EDF Vengeance, watching the void space ripple around her ship. The new void breaker technology was working perfectly, letting them track the elder species ships through their own folded space corridors. Target locked. Lieutenant Daniel Pierce called from his tactical station. Elder species fleet detected. They have no idea we're here. Shaw smiled grimly. The Vengeance had been hunting this fleet for 3 days. The elder species still hadn't figured out how human ships kept finding them in what they thought was their private highway through space. All hands, battle stations, Shaw ordered. Let's show them why they named this ship Vengeance. The elder species fleet appeared ahead of them. 5 massive ships escorting what looked like a supply convoy. Their ships still held that same beautiful crystalline appearance, but humans no longer saw beauty in them. They saw only targets. The Oracle of Centauri, the elder species' greatest military mind, was leading this convoy personally. After losing 3 major battles in the past month, the elder species had finally started taking human threats seriously, but they were still catching up to humanity's way of warfare. Enemy ships detected. An elder species sensor operator cried out, "Impossible! How did they find us in void space?" The Oracle's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. Evasive maneuvers. Raise all shields. But Shaw had already sprung her trap. While the elder species could see the Vengeance in front of them, they didn't spot the 3 other human ships that had come out of stealth mode behind them. All ships, fire pattern Delta, Shaw commanded. Let's see how they handle our new toys. The human ships fired as one. Instead of normal weapons, they launched what looked like small pods. The elder species shields easily blocked them, just as expected. Primitive projectiles, the Oracle scoffed. Their weapons cannot harm our. The pods suddenly exploded, releasing clouds of what looked like metallic dust. The elder species crews watched in confusion as the dust settled on their shields. Then the dust came alive. Millions of microscopic robots began eating through the elder species shields like acid through paper. These nanobots, based on old human science fiction stories, were now very real and very hungry. Shields failing, the elder species crews panicked. The human weapons are consuming our defense systems. Shaw watched with satisfaction. Now, Pierce, show them the real surprise. The human ships fired again, but this time with traditional weapons. With no shields to protect them, the elder species ships took devastating damage. 2 of their escort ships exploded immediately. This is the Oracle of Centauri, a transmission cut through the chaos. Cease your attack. We will surrender. Surrender. Shaw replied coldly, like you gave Europa Colony a chance to surrender. The battle that followed was short but brutal. When it ended, only the Oracle's command ship remained, floating dead in space with its engines destroyed and weapons disabled. Shaw transported over to the elder species ship with a boarding team. They found the Oracle in the command center, its crystalline form dulled with fear. How? The Oracle asked. How do you keep defeating our superior technology? Because you think technology alone wins wars, Shaw answered. Humans know better. We know that understanding your enemy, adapting to their strengths, and hitting their weaknesses matters more than having the fanciest weapons. She gestured to her team to secure the ship's database. You've been in power so long, you forgot what it's like to fight an enemy who thinks differently than you. Humans, we've spent our whole history learning from every fight, every war, every battle. The Oracle's form flickered weakly. We are millions of years old. We have seen civilizations rise and fall, yet none have fought like your kind. That's because you've never faced humans before, Shaw replied. We don't just fight to win. We fight to survive. And we're very, very good at surviving. Back on the Vengeance, Shaw received a priority message from Earth Command. The information they'd stolen from previous battles had revealed something big: the location of the Elder Species' main shipyards. "Captain," Pierce called out, "look at these readings from their database. They're already trying to adapt their shields against our nanobots." Shaw nodded. "They learn fast, but not fast enough. Send word to command. Operation Bloodstain is ready to begin." As her ship prepared to head back to human space, Shaw thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks of war. The Elder Species had started this fight thinking humans were primitive beings who needed to be taught their place. Now, with their fleets in chaos and their leaders feeling fear for the first time in millions of years, they were learning a different lesson. Humanity wasn't just another young species to be controlled. They were something the Elder Species had never seen before. An enemy who refused to follow the rules of war they'd grown comfortable with. "Send this message to all Elder Species frequencies," Shaw ordered. "Tell them, every ship you lose, every battle you fight, brings us one step closer to your homeworlds. You started this war to teach us humility. We're going to end it by teaching you extinction." The message was harsh, but that was the point. Humans had learned that sometimes the best way to end a war was to make your enemy fear the cost of continuing it. As the Vengeance disappeared back into void space, Shaw looked at the prisoner manifest. The Oracle of Centauri, the greatest military mind of the Elder Species, was now in human custody. The intelligence they would gain from this capture would be priceless. "Set course for Earth," she ordered, "and prepare the Void Breaker for another jump. We're not done teaching them fear yet." Across the battlefield, the wreckage of Elder Species ships floated silently in space. Each destroyed vessel sent the same message to the Coalition. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The Elder Species had ruled the galaxy through their advanced technology and ancient wisdom. But now they faced an enemy who turned their own advantages against them, who fought with a creativity and ferocity they couldn't understand. They had wanted to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, they were learning their own painful lesson. Sometimes, the student becomes the master, and the price of learning comes in blood. The war was about to enter a new phase, and humanity was just getting warmed up. Admiral Peter Morris watched the holographic display as the Elder Species diplomats arrived on the neutral space station. After 3 months of brutal warfare, they had finally requested peace talks. But something about this didn't feel right to him. "They're too confident," Dr. Catherine Wright whispered beside him. As head of the Psychological Warfare Division, she'd spent weeks studying Elder Species behavior patterns. "Look at how they're walking. They still think they're in control." The delegation entered the meeting room, their crystalline forms glowing with their usual otherworldly light. The Supreme Consciousness, highest authority of the Elder Species Coalition, led the group. Unlike the Archon's flowing form, the Supreme Consciousness looked like a perfect geometric shape, all sharp angles and precise lines. "We have come to discuss terms," the Supreme Consciousness announced, its voice echoing with authority. "The Coalition is willing to be lenient, given your species' youth." Morris exchanged looks with Wright. The aliens still didn't understand what they were dealing with. "Lenient?" Morris asked quietly. "You've lost 40% of your battle fleet. We've captured your greatest military strategist. We've destroyed 3 of your major shipyards. And you think you're in a position to be lenient?" The Supreme Consciousness flickered slightly. "Minor setbacks. The Coalition has ruled for millions of years. We have resources you cannot imagine." "Then why are you here?" Wright asked, her voice clinical and cold. "If these are just minor setbacks, why request peace talks?" "To prevent unnecessary bloodshed," another Elder Species representative spoke up. "We are willing to forgive your aggressive response if you accept our original terms. Submit to Coalition guidance, limit your expansion, and peace can return." Morris actually laughed, which seemed to disturb the Elder Species delegates. They weren't used to species laughing at them. "Let me be clear," Morris said, standing up. "We're not here to negotiate our surrender. We're here to discuss yours." He pressed a button, and the holographic display changed to show the latest battle reports. Hundreds of elder species ships destroyed, dozens of bases captured, supply lines in chaos. "You still think this is about putting humans in their place," Morris continued. "You don't understand what you started when you attacked Europa Colony. This isn't about territory or resources anymore. This is about making sure nobody ever tries to bully humanity again." The Supreme Consciousness's perfect geometric form showed its first crack. "You dare to threaten the Coalition?" "No threats," Wright cut in. "Just facts. We've decoded your secret communications. We know the Coalition is splitting. Some of your member species want to abandon this war. They're starting to question whether the oldest species are still fit to lead." That hit home. The elder species delegates all flickered at once, their equivalent of a shocked gasp. "Impossible," the Supreme Consciousness declared. "The Coalition has stood united for millions of years, until you picked a fight with humans." Morris smiled. "Here are our terms: complete withdrawal from human space, recognition of human independence, reparations for Europa Colony, and a public acknowledgement that attacking humanity was a mistake." These terms are outrageous. An elder species diplomat shouted, "We will not bow to primitives." "Then the war continues," Morris said calmly. "And next time, we won't just destroy your ships. We'll start taking your worlds." He nodded to Wright, who activated another hologram. This one showed designs for a new human weapon, one that could crack planets. It was a bluff. The weapon wasn't ready yet, but the elder species didn't know that. The Supreme Consciousness studied the designs, its perfect form showing more cracks. "You would not dare. Such weapons violate all galactic conventions. The same conventions you violated when you murdered thousands of innocent colonists." Wright asked, "You started this war thinking humans needed to learn humility. Instead, you're learning that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those you underestimate." The peace talks broke down shortly after that. The elder species delegates left in a hurry, their confident entrance replaced by what looked almost like panic. "They'll be back," Wright said once they were gone. "Their society is built on the idea that older means wiser. Every defeat we inflict challenges that belief. Their whole culture is starting to crack." Morris nodded, watching the elder species ships depart. "How long until the Coalition splits?" Based on intercepted communications, Wright checked her data. 2, maybe 3 more major defeats. Some of the younger elder species are already questioning their leader's judgment. They're starting to ask why the primitive humans keep winning. "Then we'll give them those defeats," Morris said. "Send word to the fleet. Operation Shattered Pride is now active. Target their core worlds. Let's show them what happens when you push humanity too far." As alerts went out across human space, Morris thought about how much had changed. The elder species had thought their age made them unbeatable. Instead, it had made them predictable. While they clung to their traditional ways of war, humanity kept adapting, kept surprising them. "Latest intelligence report," an aide announced, rushing in. 3 more elder species worlds are calling for surrender. They're asking for separate peace agreements. "The Coalition is breaking," Wright observed. "Their pride won't let them admit defeat as a whole, but individually. They're starting to understand what they're really facing." Morris looked out at the stars, thinking about all the human ships moving into position for the next phase of war. The elder species thought they'd been merciful by only destroying one colony. They were about to learn that mercy, like respect, had to be earned. And humanity was fresh out of mercy. "Send one last message to the Supreme Consciousness," Morris ordered. "Tell them, you had your chance for peace. What happens next is on your hands." The war was entering its final phase. The elder species were about to learn the true price of pride. And that price would be paid in blood. Commander Elizabeth Stone watched from the bridge of her stealth ship as the massive human fleet gathered near the elder species home system. Operation Shattered Pride was about to begin, and she would lead the first strike. "Chief Engineer, are the new weapons ready?" she asked, turning to Alan Parker, who had spent months perfecting humanity's latest tools of war. "Ready and eager," Parker replied, patting the control panel. "These babies will shut down their planetary shields just like we planned. The elder species won't know what hit them." The last prophet, their captured elder species prisoner, stood nearby under guard. Unlike its crystalline relatives, its form had grown dull with worry. It had agreed to help humans in exchange for protection from its own kind. "You don't understand what you're about to do," the prophet warned. "The homeworld has never been attacked in millions of years. The shock alone could shatter the coalition forever." "That's the point," Stone said coolly. "They need to learn that age doesn't mean immunity. Actions have consequences, even for species as old as yours." The battle began without warning. Human ships appeared from void space all around the elder species' home system. The defenders barely had time to raise their alarms before the first wave of attacks hit. Parker's new weapons worked perfectly. Invisible energy pulses swept across the planet's shield network, finding the weaknesses that the prophet had revealed. One by one, the mighty defensive screens that had protected the elder species for eons went dark. "Impossible." The elder species commanders cried out across all channels. "The shields have stood for millions of years. How can they fail now?" Stone's voice cut across their panic. "Because you never thought anyone would dare to attack them. You never adapted, never improved. You just assumed they would always protect you." The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. Each ship knew its role. Each weapon had its target. This wasn't just an attack. It was a message written in fire and destruction. On the surface of the homeworld, the Supreme Consciousness watched in horror as human ships entered the atmosphere. Its perfect geometric form was now cracked and damaged, just like its people's confidence. "Stop this madness," it broadcasted. "We will give you anything you want." "Too late," Stone replied. "You had your chance for peace. Now you get your lesson." The human fleet didn't destroy the planet. They didn't need to. Instead, they systematically demolished every major military installation, every shipyard, every defense center. They left the civilian areas untouched. Another message. Humans could have killed everyone, but chose not to. "Why?" the last prophet asked, watching its homeworld burn. "Why show mercy to civilians when our leaders showed none to yours?" "Because we're not like you," Parker answered, checking the damage reports. "We're not trying to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure nobody ever threatens us again." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the mighty elder species homeworld lay defenseless. Its orbital rings were destroyed, its military might shattered, its leaders hiding in underground bunkers. All across the coalition, the news spread like wildfire. The impossible had happened. The oldest, most powerful species in the galaxy had been humbled in their own home system. Stone received reports from across space. 3 more elder species worlds had surrendered. 5 others had declared independence from the coalition. The empire that had stood for millions of years was falling apart in days. "Send the final message," she ordered. On every screen, every communication device across the elder species territories, humans broadcast the same video. It showed Europa Colony before and after the attack. It showed the human counterattacks. And finally, it showed today's battle. "You started this war to teach us our place," Stone's voice declared. "Instead, you learned that humanity cannot be bullied, cannot be controlled, and cannot be underestimated. The age of the elder species' unchallenged rule is over." The Supreme Consciousness, its form barely holding together, finally sent its response. "What are your terms?" Stone looked at the last prophet who had helped them win this battle. Its crystalline form showed both sadness and understanding. "Unconditional surrender," Stone replied. "The coalition will be dissolved. Each species will be free to choose its own path. And you will remember this day every time you look up at the stars and see human ships patrolling your skies." The prophet spoke up. My people will never forget this defeat. You have changed the galaxy forever." "Good," Parker said firmly. "Maybe the next time someone discovers a young species, they'll remember what happened when the elder species tried to bully humanity." Stone watched as surrender signals came in from across the system. The mighty elder species, who had ruled for millions of years, had finally met their match. Not because humans had better technology or stronger weapons, but because they had never forgotten how to fight, how to adapt, how to survive. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "The homeworld has fallen. Operation Shattered Pride is a success." As her fleet secured the system, Stone thought about how this war would be remembered, not just as humanity's victory, but as the day the galaxy learned that true strength isn't measured in years or technology. It's measured in determination, adaptability, and the will to fight against anyone who threatens your freedom. The elder species had ruled through fear and pride. Now they were learning a new emotion, humility. And the galaxy would never be the same. President Christopher Hayes stood at the podium in the newly built Galactic Assembly on Earth. 1 year had passed since the fall of the elder species homeworld. Today, representatives from every spacefaring civilization had gathered to sign the new Galactic Charter. A year ago, Hayes began, looking at the diverse crowd before him. "We faced a choice: submit to control by those who thought age meant wisdom, or fight for our right to determine our own future. Today, we meet not as rulers and subjects, but as equals." Admiral Susan Reynolds, who had led many of the final battles, stood guard nearby. Her eyes kept moving to the elder species delegates. Their crystalline forms no longer shone with their former pride. Instead, they glowed with a quieter, more thoughtful light. The young ones, as they called themselves now, had taken control after the old leadership stepped down. They were still elder species, still ancient by human standards, but they had learned from their defeat. "The galaxy changes," said First Speaker Maya, leader of the young ones. Her crystalline form sparkled with new energy as she addressed the assembly. "For millions of years, we thought we knew everything. We were wrong. Humans taught us that wisdom comes not from age, but from being willing to learn and change." Reynolds remembered the final days of the war, when the coalition had crumbled. Not with a bang, but with a series of quiet surrenders as more and more elder species realized their old ways couldn't survive. "The hardest lesson," Maya continued, "was learning that power doesn't come from technology or longevity. It comes from adaptation, from facing challenges, from never stopping to grow. Humans knew this. We had forgotten it." The new Galactic Charter was nothing like the old coalition rules. Every species, no matter their age or technology level, would have an equal voice. No more guidance from elder races, no more forced submission to ancient laws. President Hayes activated the holographic display, showing the terms of the new charter. "All species have the right to develop at their own pace. No interference in internal affairs of any civilization. Trade and cultural exchange encouraged but never forced. Joint defense agreement against outside threats. Technology sharing based on mutual consent. Regular assembly meetings where all voices carry equal weight." Some asked why we didn't destroy the elder species completely, Hayes said, addressing the question many had wondered: why we showed mercy after their attack on Europa colony. The answer is simple: humans don't fight for revenge. We fight to protect ourselves and to prevent future threats. Reynolds watched as representatives from younger species, races that had lived in fear of the coalition, nodded in agreement. They had watched humans defeat the undefeatable and then show restraint in victory. The last prophet, now a respected advisor to both humans and elder species, stepped forward. "I remember when we thought humans were primitive because they fought among themselves. Now we understand that those conflicts taught them what we have forgotten: how to adapt, how to improve, how to become stronger." As the delegates began signing the charter, Reynolds noticed something interesting. The elder species representatives didn't move with their old flowing grace. Instead, they walked more directly, more purposefully, almost like humans. They were learning, adapting, changing. The greatest gift of defeat, Maya said quietly to Hayes, was remembering how to learn. We had grown so sure of ourselves that we stopped questioning, stopped improving. Humans reminded us that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't weapons or technology. It's becoming too proud to change. The signing ceremony continued as Earth's sun set, casting golden light through the assembly hall's windows. Every signature represented something new in galactic history. True equality between species, regardless of age or origin. And what of humanity's role? Someone asked from the crowd. You have the power to rule now. Why share it? Hayes smiled. Because we remember our own history. Every empire that tried to rule through force eventually fell. True strength comes from cooperation, from learning from each other. We didn't fight this war to become the new tyrants. We fought it to ensure liberty for all. The last signature was added as night fell. The new galactic charter was now law. Humans would help patrol space alongside their former enemies, ensuring peace and freedom for all species. Remember this day, the last prophet announced to the assembly, not as the day the elder species fell, but as the day the galaxy truly began to grow. We thought we were teaching humanity its place in the stars. Instead, they taught us that every species, no matter how old or young, has something to learn and something to teach. As the ceremony ended, Reynolds watched the delegates mingling freely, elder species talking with younger races as equals, sharing ideas and learning from each other. The war had cost many lives, but it had bought something precious, a future where no species would be bullied or controlled. The stars looked different now, Maya said to Hayes as they walked out onto the assembly hall's balcony. When I was young, only a few thousand years old, we thought we owned them. Now I see them as humans do, full of endless possibilities, mysteries to explore, new things to learn. President Hayes nodded. That's why we fought so hard. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that deserves the chance to reach for the stars in their own way, at their own pace. The galaxy had changed forever. The elder species had learned about fear, yes, but more importantly, they had remembered how to wonder, how to grow, how to live as part of a community rather than rulers of an empire. And humanity. They had proven something important, that wisdom doesn't come from age alone, and that sometimes the greatest teachers are those who never stop being students. The new era had begun, and this time, every species would face the future together, as equals under the same stars they all shared.